For the past few months, I have put far too much time into doing a deep dive around MLB's financial system and also the collective bargaining agreement. Why am I doing all that? I want to help avoid a lockout in 2027. Salary cap is the big topic on everyone's mind for this upcoming labor negotiation. The owners obviously want it, and what's unique about this time around is there are a lot of fans who want a salary cap as well. But I ran the numbers, and there is a huge problem that nobody's talking about. The salary floor. If MLB copied the other league systems, because of the revenue disparity that exists in Major League Baseball, 15 teams simply could not afford a salary floor. By the way, I'm Mike Whitmire, CEO of FloQast. We are an accounting software company. However, we love sports, we love financials, and we especially love baseball. So much so, I got a copy of the 2006 Basic Agreement. Fun fact, this is Jamie McCourt's copy, as signed by here, the former Dodger owner. And we have beat this thing up so we can understand how the financials and the labor negotiations will work within baseball. Our goal is to help educate fans on the mechanisms behind the impending 2027 lockout. But first, let's run through the numbers so we can understand why a salary cap and, more challengingly, a salary floor is impossible. To understand what a salary cap might look like for baseball, we can draw inspiration from other leagues. The NBA, NFL, and NHL all effectively have salary cap systems in place. Those work, there's really good parity in the leagues. Why can't MLB just copy those? Well, let's start by understanding those systems from the other leagues. Let me show you how they work. Let's start by taking a look at the NBA. So the NBA has a soft cap system in place. Technically, you are allowed to go over it, but their system is so punitive that many teams do not go over it. Basketball-related income is what drives that salary cap, so the NBA has their own definition of what basketball-related income is, and that is how you calculate what the salary cap is. It's very easy. You take 50% of basketball-related income, divide that by the number of teams in the NBA, and that's your salary cap for that season. Now, what's interesting is if the NBA does really well and revenues shoot through the roof, that means the players are going to get 50% of that upside, so they're going to keep making more money if the NBA does well. So there's a cap at 50%. There is a floor with that. The floor is very simple. The floor is 90% of the cap. Part of the reason you can have a salary cap and a floor is because there is extremely high financial transparency in the NBA. All the teams are audited, they provide financial statements, the NBA is audited, they provide financial statements. So there's a lot of trust around the revenue sharing, and people are really getting what they're worth and what's fair. All right, let's talk about the NFL. So the NFL is the league with a very true, hard salary cap. With that, there's a floor. The floor is 90% of the cap. In the NFL, 48% of league revenue is going to the players. So if the league grows in revenue, the players get more money. With that, there's extremely high financial transparency, so everyone knows the salary cap is being calculated properly, and the NFL does have an incredibly rigid enforcement system for this. NHL, very similar to the NFL, they have a hard cap, the floor is 90%. They get a little more revenue, 50% of the revenue goes to the players. They also have high financial transparency. It's exactly the same as the other systems in that it's linked to revenue, and if the league grows, the players will ultimately make more money. So some very clear common threads there. You need clear financial transparency. You need to link a salary cap to a salary floor. The players need to be guaranteed a certain percentage of revenue, anywhere from 48% to 50%. The floors are all 90% of the caps. Everything is related to overall revenue so that players make more money if the league performs better. So as I was doing my research here, I thought, this sounds pretty simple. Why doesn't MLB just do the exact same thing as every other league? Then I ran the numbers, and it all fell apart. Let's just say hypothetically, the players went to the owners and said, you know what? We will agree to a salary cap. That sounds great to me. We just want it to look like every other league. So if you take a look at those leagues, we're talking NHL, NFL, NBA, the way they think about a salary cap is as a percentage of revenue that the league makes. So, for example, NFL, 48% of league revenue is allocated to salaries, and that's how the salary cap is calculated. NBA is at 50%, NHL is at 50% as well. Now, if we take those numbers and apply them to baseball, the way it would work is we would look at the $12 billion of total revenue that MLB produced in 2024. The players would say, we want 48% of that. Let's just call it 50% for easy math here. We want 50% of that to be allocated to player salaries, and that's how we calculate our salary cap. So $6 billion divided by 30 is a salary cap of $200 million in payroll for each team. Now, more importantly, the way a salary floor works is a salary floor is 90% of the salary cap. You are required to spend that much. If you do not spend that much, you are penalized. So what is 90% of 200 million? That is 180 million. That's where the problem comes in. We've covered the economics of other teams. We've looked at the revenue that they all have. You legitimately have teams that simply cannot afford a payroll of $180 million. So the math on a salary cap doesn't work. To make it work, we need to have even more equality with revenue sharing, which means you're going to have to convince 8 large market teams to share even more of the revenue with the small market teams. Do you think that's going to happen? Owner infighting is kind of an underappreciated part of these negotiations. A really good example is around the initial establishment of the luxury tax. You have small market teams that want larger market teams to pay into a luxury tax system. Obviously, the large market teams are not going to want to pay extra dollars for no good reason. How does that work within the ownership group? According to the bylaws, you need to get 23 out of the 30 teams to agree to any change that would affect the owners. So 75% of the league needs to agree to these changes. And if you look at the luxury tax, you were able to get that kind of support because there were only a couple teams that were really abusing the salary. And if you only have 1, 2, maybe 3 teams that are spending that much money, it's easy enough to get 23 out of the 30 on board with making a significant change and dragging the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets along with them. So as it relates to sharing significantly more revenue with other teams, I'm pretty confident we have 20 yes votes, we have 5 no votes, and then we have 5 swing votes. 5 I'm very confident would not agree to it. Those 5 are the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets, the Red Sox, and the Cubs. Then you have 5 more teams where I classify them as probably not going to agree, but maybe you can convince them to do that. Those 5 teams are the Phillies, Giants, Astros, Rangers, and, believe it or not, the Chicago White Sox. So for a salary floor to happen, we need 3 out of those 5 teams to side with the small market teams. I don't think that's going to happen. And look, as a business owner myself, I don't blame these owners for wanting to protect their own interests. If I'm running the Dodgers, I don't want to share more of my revenue because I have invested significant dollars into building out my regional sports network. If I'm a small market team, I genuinely cannot afford a salary floor and just can't agree to that. So it's not that these owners are greedy, it's really that the system itself is a problem, and it needs to be fixed. But the reality is, I'm just a fan, I'm an accountant with access to Google. I want to get the perspective of someone who's actually lived in the big leagues before, someone who's thrown a pitch off of a mound. So I sat down with my friend and 2-time World Series champion, Dan Runzler. Let's hear what he has to say about it. How do players feel about a salary cap?
I think that the way it's been brought up is a cap for us, at least when I was playing, was like that they could take dollars out of your pocket. Like we don't want, and that was the one thing that baseball always had over other sports that we were always, especially when I first got up there and I was part of the association, or the union, it was really cool because every other sport has a cap, we don't. You could make $500 million, if you want, like it doesn't matter, but you got to earn it or you got to try and get there. But so for me, I think the cap had more, it sounded more negative than it could be if they did do a cap like you were explaining earlier. Like it just sounded like, oh, the cap means you're taking away the amount of money I can earn. So I think nowadays with how much more knowledgeable people are about like salary cap, because then you watch, guys in the NBA making $78 million a year. It's like caps they're not all created equal. I think players just want to make sure they get paid what they're worth. And they want an opportunity to get paid by multiple teams. Or you want a bidding war pretty much for your services. And if it's only 2 teams in the hunt, that's where it takes away your opportunity to earn.
So here's what we learned. A salary cap would be about $200 million. With that, the salary floor would be about $180 million. The problem there is that 15 teams could not afford the salary floor. To do that, owners would have to fight over revenue sharing, which makes an agreement nearly impossible. 3 big market teams would have to agree to flip their position on this and share more revenue. I find it hard to believe that will happen. I am confident enough in that prediction that going forward, we will operate under the assumption there will not be a salary cap as a result of these negotiations. All that said, it could happen eventually. Rob Manfred wants it to happen, but we need to think long-term about it and lay the foundation as part of this collective bargaining agreement to ultimately make that happen in maybe 5 or 10 years. We need to incentivize teams to centralize media rights and have more fair distribution of that revenue so that we can have a real conversation about a salary cap and a salary floor. But before we dig into solving baseball's problems in 2035, we need to talk about 2 loopholes that exist today within the current system. Next episode, I'll walk you through exactly what those two loopholes are and propose a solution to fix them. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out.